Perfect. Kanchan from Remitter. Welcome to the BlueMax podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Ravi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great considering I think we're on week 8 of quarantine now. I honestly thought we're on week 6, week 7, I'm not sure. And I went back and started counting, and I think it's been 8 weeks.
I guess yes, that's right. So
It's
I
weird.
remember
Time is
13th of March, our entire team went full remote, work from home.
mhm.
The 12th of March, I guess, or 11th was when WHO announced pandemic,
Yeah,
and the 13th of March we decided to go full remote.
right. About the same actually. So I think quarantine on Ontario or in Canada was launched on the 15th of March. So March 15th was supposed to be our previous episode, right? Sorry, we had 5 episodes lined up for on our podcast at our physical location. And on Friday, just like you, on the 13th, we started talking to our team. It's like, this is getting kind of serious, guys. And we messaged our guests and saying, due to the COVID concerns, is anyone experiencing any symptoms? Out of
Yeah.
5 people that are supposed to come into a physical location, 3 were experiencing symptoms, and one of them just came back from Spain, and we had shut down. And literally the day after, that, we film our podcast before this every 3 weeks on a Sunday, right? So we have the whole office to ourselves, and the podcast team, the production team comes in, and the guests come in, and we film like 5 at a time. And we had to shut that down. And then Monday, the quarantine was called, and life just changed, right? So
Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about how that has changed for you, and how Remitter and your company and your startup is functioning in this time where now weeks have rolled by, almost 2. We're in month 2 of lockdown
Yeah.
and COVID, the COVID pandemic. How have you guys adjusted? What are you guys dealing with? What is your new reality?
Yeah. So adjustment is something which takes time. First few days goes by just like that. You don't really feel
Yeah.
much. It's just like regular course working from home. But managing team, keeping the team dynamics going, keeping the same kind of bonding, same kind of alignment is something which takes time to build. Um, the good part, the advantage that we have had is because we have always had distributed team.
Mhm.
Just that people have been working from offices, but in different cities and different countries and different time zones.
Mhm.
So as a team, we have been uh, pretty fine working over Zoom, collaborating over Zoom and various collaboration tools. However, what we were not really geared for, that you live in the same city, but you still don't see each other. And that's something which has taken us time to understand, uh, go through, and realign our priorities. So it's not just that realigning the team, but also our priorities had to change. We were massively preparing for a launch in US market, and uh, pandemic hit, and we decided to pull back and said, this is not the time to open a new market, and we must concentrate on what we have, consolidate, and take this time to relook at our priorities for for the current quarter and the next quarter. We were still in
Yeah.
March at that point in time, and we had to huddle together. Each team had to figure out what our new roadmap looks like, and then everyone had to be aligned to the new uh, reality.
Yeah.
That is something which worked out pretty well for us. I think as a team, everyone rallied together. Um, it's a little unsettling when you have been working on a certain goal and a deadline that you want to meet, and everyone is raring to go. And suddenly you put a hard brake on and say, hey, we are going to, take a detour before you come back to this track. So it does take time, but it worked out pretty well for us. So
Mhm.
what we did was, of course, we changed a lot of things internally in terms of how we collaborate, how do we work together, how do we still keep that team bonding going, given the fact that we have not really met each other in past, like you said, 8 weeks. We had not thought it's 8 weeks yet, but yeah, it's actually 8 weeks. I was also thinking 6 weeks, by the way. So yeah,
right.
So it takes time. It takes time, but we have adjusted pretty well to this.
Cool. I really like the fact that you brought this up, right? The idea of team bonding and building during a time where we can't see each other physically. Not just even remote teams can't see each other physically. Everyone's working together in like a remote and virtual capacity. I mean, what does it look like for a company, right? Especially a startup that requires such immense bonding. Do you guys have to now enforce the kind of culture within the company where everyone comes on and talks on Zoom together, or like it's more informal conversations? Like,
so we do, yeah. So we tried to keep some of the offline events that we had. We tried to bring it online. We created some new formats to how do we engage with each other. Obviously, we try and do as much as video calls as possible. Even if, for example, if I'm traveling and if I need to collaborate with someone on the team, we would have done an audio call and been okay with it. But now we try and do as much as video call as possible. We started doing all hands weekly, every week religiously, and everyone is present there, and we try and get to see everyone. We do water cooler, so we have a fixed time for water cooler. Anyone can hop in, talk about whatever is there, and we typically bump into people. It's just like we would bump into office, which is not scheduled. You don't know what to talk there, but because you bumped in, so you really chat. We had, every Friday we would meet and we would chat about various things, everything except work. Obviously, over everyone's favorite drink. We made that virtual now. So we do that every Friday still, just that it is virtual. And that's so much fun. So that's kind of a team bonding part of it and keeping everyone aligned. We share frequently weeks, wins and losses on our all hands. That's something which is really useful because, when you're in an office, you may be working in department A and someone is working department B. But because you're working together in the same place, you would typically chat and you would know what's happening without having to put a structure to it. But it basically meant now that we have to put structure to that, to the extent that we have to reorganize our Slack channel to match with the new structure so that, we could share more things which otherwise we would not have really shared because why? I mean, we're just sitting across, right? Why do you need to share that on Slack? Why do you need to share with a larger group when the time comes? You would typically share. So I think over communication is the key. We don't want to be really spammy and take each other's time, but communicating as much as possible is very, very important. Everyone has their own challenges, particularly team members who are also parents. They certainly realize that schooling is more about daycare than about education, and they have to adjust the time schedule. So so we're learning. It's fun to have someone's baby popping up on the screen suddenly in the middle of a call, and you're fine with it. It's fun.
Yeah, it's definitely changed work environments. And as startups go, I mean, we are used to adapting, right? We're adaptable, we're lean, we run lean, and pivoting is part of the game, right?
Absolutely.
I've been talking to a lot of like legacy companies, like larger corporate types. They're struggling. They can't implement that kind of culture. Their kid will come inside and they'll get people get embarrassed, and they don't have. It throws them off that they're used to being a personal side to work and a work side, right? You're having different dimensions, just like on social media networks, like you're different on Instagram versus you're different on LinkedIn, right? People are used to these different personas within the work environment. And I think that's all blending together, right? It's no longer work-life balance. It's about work-life integration, how it all kind of works together.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that 1.3 billion people are all now experiencing this and experimenting all together. right?
True, absolutely.
It is,
And the
yeah,
best part is that even um, functions which were originally considered, oh, this can only be done face to face, have so naturally moved then to virtual without people really, getting really discomfort about it.
yeah,
As in, if you look at a lot of functions which required face-to-face collaboration, we are doing whiteboarding session. Obviously, that has to be face-to-face, right? And how we have just adapted to it as if it has always existed. The fact is, technology has always existed, right? It was our resistance to change which forced us to continue in the old world. And
mm,
this has given us an opportunity to go out and explore all that is out there, to bring things digital, and let us collaborate virtually without really losing productivity.
yeah, yeah. And what do you, how do you feel about this environment, right? As like a forward, like moving forward. Let's say lockdown is lifted, right? Because the like habit forming. If you're doing something consistently for about 6 weeks, it turns into a habit, and it's
Yeah,
become really hard to break. And one of the part of things of lockdown, part of the anxieties and the stresses is that the old habits were broken, so you're forced to adapt and revert. And not most people, majority of people, are not used to that at all.
yeah,
But now that 6, 7, 8 weeks have gone by, we kind of gotten used to this.
yeah,
These Zoom calls, working from home, having to integrate work and life, doing some work, jumping off a call, going and doing lunch, and give it to your family members, and jumping back into it, like all this balancing act. And companies are looking at things that's like, why was I paying $10,000, $30,000 a month in real estate, right?
yeah.
In office expenses, and housing people, when we act just as functionally now, right? How do you find yourself as an effectivity tool? Like, would you go back to how things were? Would you want to go for a blend, like working within a co-working space, or that's like people can come in and go freely? What do you think about the future of work? What are we learning?
Very interesting point. I see three distinct ways in which this would work. One, we would certainly have startups uh, adopting more or being amenable to more remote working or distributed teams. Um, I've seen that pretty often in startup world that, oh, we are so early stage that we have to be in the room together to be able to move at breakneck speed.
Mm,
Um, that is something which is going to change, and more startups are going to say distributed teams are fine, and they could still move at you know semi breakneck speed, and that will be fine. World will not come to end if we don't move at that speed, right? So that's one change which I certainly see is adoption of more distributed teams. The second which I see is blended um, workforce. I mean, I don't know how we are going to decide. We would certainly let our team figure out what's the best way that we are comfortable with. But I really don't see us going back to the old environment that everyone every day goes to work. Otherwise, they feel I'm not doing full justice to what I'm supposed to be doing, right? I don't see that happening. I certainly see that a lot more people will blend it. Hot desking will become important. So if you possibly had 20 desks, you would possibly downsize, make it 5, 7, 10 desk environment where people will come and go and utilize that desk. That's what I see becoming more prevalent. And third is for larger organizations, which have been kind of forced into this situation of remote work. I know a whole lot of organizations which run contact centers, right? They were not ready for people working remotely. They had data privacy issues, security issues, background noise, all of that. They're going to be still, at least so far that I've spoken to, they still think it's a phase which will pass. and they will be able to get everyone back in the room to work together, they are in for a rude shock, because even when the lockdown lifts, the social distancing isn't really going away for a long time, right? And if that is not going away for a long time, you cannot really have people sitting next to each other, bumping into each other in the hallway. And if that's the case, then very certainly you also are forced to do blended work environment between remote and physical. But I still see larger organizations struggling with that, but that's what the reality is going to be.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it there in the sense that even though things are lifted, it's not going to go back to normal, right? Yeah. I think a lot of people, especially at the beginning, were like talking about, oh, when are we going back to normal? When are things going back to normal? I think it's dawning on us that normal is changed, it's shifted.
Yeah.
Right. Even if things are like lifted and we find a vaccine for COVID tomorrow and go, things are still the social principles are now caked into ourselves. It's now caked into our culture identity, right? Idea of distancing, not going out as much. People are still have that sense of fear, and again, the habit of not seeing as much people anymore, physically thing. And everyone's online is saying that when things are open, people are flood out into the streets, and there's gonna be parties, and we're going to do that. I don't think that's the case. I think people are still really much scared. People are worried. People think about the future for themselves, for their families, and for each other, right? For society in general. And I think even with all this, like, it opens up a great bunch of opportunity. Because like I alluded to before, 1.3 billion people in industrialized nations who have access to high-tech devices like this are now connected. They're all dealing with the same problem, right? Language barriers is not much an issue when you have translating tools, but also you can have face-to-face interaction instantly. The boundaries of space have drifted away. What I'm interested in is like, how are the new structures that form from this, the people who figure it out, new ways to run companies, new ways to hire and maintain staff, new ways to do sales, new ways to build a product, right? Becomes more distributed.
Yeah.
And operate like that. And if we can, and I feel like this situation has really heralded the future of work and the fourth industrial revolution. Like e-commerce, for instance, they were experiencing a steady growth of 1% a year, right? The entire industry, which is phenomenal growth for the numbers behind it. But in the last 3 months, they have grown, the entire e-commerce industry has grown at 1% a month. It's 3 years worth of growth they've experienced. So certain markets are exploding, and it's radically shifting how we do commerce, how we do sales, how we operate. And this is one of my main interests in having you from Remitter on how you guys play the payment space in this kind of environment where things have drastically shifted. We're still dealing with archaic like banking processes that are like decades old, that have been slowing down business in the virtual space. How is that being transformed?
Very interesting point. To be honest, if you had given this scenario to me in January and said, if this happens, how this would prove, I wouldn't have been able to give an answer which would have proven right at this point in time. Even when pandemic started to show up their face, so it was not called pandemic, I was in I was in Bay Area, San Francisco, and people had already started practicing social distancing. I was, offices would have notices that said, please do not take offense. We're not shaking hands, and please use, wash your hands and sanitizers all around. Even at that point in time, it felt as this is a short phase and go away. It felt that it's going to impact our business badly because we could see how the supply chain was getting impacted. And yes, we did see the payments volume to certain countries go down. We have a very interesting graph which shows China, obviously, because supply chain is a lot dependent on China for most countries. So payments going to China is a large part of payment volume that we process, right? We would see China would keep going up. End of January, China started going down. February, it was 75% of the typical volume. First week of March, it was almost 90% down. It was 10%. It was a trickle. And we had to prep ourselves for a downturn in our business. Around mid-March, we started getting many customers coming online. What really happened was that while we've always been talking about how we are the best alternative for online banking today, because most banks, as you said, are very archaic processes, legacy systems. You still have to go and visit branches to do a lot of things or call up people. And banks started having trouble because they had to curtail branches, curtail banking hours. Online support was taking a much longer, and our customer acquisitions shot up without actually we having to do a lot of extra work for this. And we saw customers flowing through our door as a floodgate has opened. We had to get back at improving our processes so that we can cut down the time that it takes for us to onboard customers. We had to completely reprioritize our processes. We had to retool things so that we could cut down time, bring in more efficiency. We couldn't really go ahead and hire more people just because we got more customers, right? That's not our business model. So we had to bring in a lot more efficiency, a lot more automation to deal with this. And while the customer acquisition is, really graph went up like this, and if you see that, typically it's a mid-March when the numbers have shot up drastically. It's a literal, hockey stick that you talk about, that hockey stick. Did we anticipate it? No, we did not anticipate it, right? And then, because we really are processing payments for supply chain, be it for services, be it for goods, and we have seen how the volume went down to zero and how some other country replaced China as a source where people had to find new suppliers. Because like you said, e-commerce is booming. Demand has not gone down for things, right? Mm-hmm. But supply has gone down. So the businesses had to quickly go and find new supplier elsewhere. So possibly they couldn't get in China, but they had some warehouse or some supplier in US which has got the stock. So they want to get paid, send payment there and secure that supply. And we were the mechanism because we guarantee next business day payment reaches to your supplier. And people were looking at coming and saying, hey, I need to secure the supply. Do you guarantee the payment will reach tomorrow? And we could say, yes, payment will reach tomorrow. That created a completely new opportunity for us in the sense that the appreciation for what we bring to the table was a lot more than what it was before pandemic hit. It's like same thing if you talk about Zoom. Zoom has existed. People said, oh yeah, it's a great tool, right? But how many people really used it to the extent that's being used today? Because people suddenly realized, oh, this is godsend. We must use it now. And that's what really happened with us as well.
Yeah. So you're one of the few companies in the space where growth has exploded because of the shift in the market. And now you're like trying to secure that holding within the growth, right? You're trying to hold on to that growth. I mean, one of the worst kind of failures a startup failures, quote unquote, a startup can experience is failing in growth. Because you can build so quickly or like try to onboard things so quickly and grow so quickly that you can build all these processes and build all these things underneath you that are toxic and can hurt you long term and can come back. And then coming back and fix that is hard. And this is like the catch-22 that we're facing is that, cool, there's a whole bunch of work, there's a whole bunch of new markets that opened up and there's a bunch of work to do. But if we move too quickly without thinking and being strategic, we can set ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
As CEO, how's your mindset been during this time of having to navigate through this and being there for people and the changes being in effect?
Very good question. I have seen, thankfully, this is my third company, which basically means I've made a lot of such mistakes in past, which I do not want to repeat it now, right? So one of the things that we really do is that we, instead of trying to build something mega product or a huge launch, we try and do things incrementally, release as quickly as possible, see what is the impact, come back and rebuild it. Just to give you a very simple example, almost overnight, a customer came and said, hey, we had a service provider which is not performing as good as we would want them to. And they need to send payments to a large number of healthcare workers every day after their shift ends. Can we use your API to do that? And they said, yeah, please go ahead and do that. And we have a simple feature which says, hey, give us the email ID, phone number. They get a secure link where they can give their bank account detail, and they get paid. They get a payment in their account the same day evening. And that was used, but not to the extent which this customer was scaling up with. Because as you know, the healthcare demand for healthcare work has gone up. So that had to scale, and we had to ensure that it's very intuitive. It wasn't as great. Now, we quickly worked out what the best case scenario should be. Here is what should ideally be to take care of all the challenges that we see right now on this simple looking interface. But do we wait for 7 days to deliver that, which is the ideal thing to do, but then the customer is going to suffer? We have to take an intermediate approach. So we say, this is what will be, instead of on day 7, this is going to be on day 10. But some element of this, we are going to improve on the current product that we have. And we had to iterate through that. That iteration ensured that customers did not suffer. At the same point in time, we did not sit on that band-aid that we had created just to fix for that day. We said, no, this is going to get replaced. 7 days down the line, that new thing was up. So it's very important to have the mix of, or the right balance of agility versus sustainability of that solution. Otherwise, like you said, we create technical debt, which comes back to bite us over a period of time. It would have been very easy to go fix that and say, hey, this is working, let's go and move on and do something else. But we decided not to do that. And there's tons of such examples. Like I said, when we onboard customers, there were a lot of things that we needed to do to ensure that we could handle the volume without really increasing manpower. So that mixes, that balance is extremely important.
That's interesting. Can you talk a little bit more from your words? What Remitter is? What does it do? And has that changed due to everything?
Yeah. So Remitter is a replacement for the payment services which your bank provides, which is your EFT, wire transfer, check payment. We make that completely online, seamless, and predictable experience, which basically means that if you sign up with Remitter, you would be able to send payments to your supplier, staff, contractor within Canada or anywhere in the world. We guarantee next business day the payment reaches the recipient's bank account. We guarantee they get the exact amount of payment which you're supposed to send. There is no deduction which happens over a period of time or over the pipe as it happens in case of wire transfer. And we ensure that's highly cost effective. This is exactly what we provided earlier. This is exactly what we provide even now. To make that easy and collaborative, what we did was that we integrated with Xero QuickBooks so that, if you have a supplier invoice there, one tap, it shows up the invoice, this is due, one tap, we go debit your bank account, we go credit the bank account of the supplier wherever in the world they are. We make that data available to your bookkeeper so that they have access to your account and they can do all reconciliation all by themselves. But we also realized that this was a time when we had to step up, and that's what we did. So during the entire month of April, we just made it free of charge to do all transactions. So all our customers, they paid nothing during that period, because that was a peak period when everyone was really suffering, everyone shuttering down. most of the relief which was being provided by the government had still not hit the bank account of the businesses. So we just made that free. That's the only change that we really made. Our product remains same, just that we have created a capability to handle hundreds of customers, new customers joining in every day.
No, I like that. So you say you guarantee payments next day payments? Next day?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's extremely difficult, right? Like only a few payment companies can do that currently. Now, which regions is that available in?
You can send next day payment to US, you can send next day payment to Europe, UK, a large part of Asia as well. We have spent time building a payment network, which is proprietary, where we have our own direct relationship in each of these countries that we cover. And if you're sending, for example, payment to US, to your supplier in US, we guarantee next business day payment features. If you're sending it to someone in Asia or Europe, next business payment features. And that's because we don't use a traditional banking channel. We just created a parallel network of payments.
Sorry, what was the last part?
We just created a parallel payment network.
Can we talk a little more about that? Like, what does that look like? What does that mean?
That's a complex piece. It basically means, one, to do something like this, we are regulated here in Canada because we touch the money, which basically means we have the same kind of regulatory obligations that banks have it in terms of identifying our customer, collecting all the documents, anti-money laundering checks, various other compliances. Then on the we integrate with banks here so that we can go and pull money out of anyone's bank account here as long as they give us authorization to do that. Build fraud protection so that various frauds which you see here in terms of identity theft and account takeover, we mitigate against that. Then we partner with banks in right now 75 countries in the world where we have partner banks where we ensure their money reaches the next business day, and that we do that by building relationship with them where we have API integrations. There's a way in which the money would move there so that they would be able to, without asking 10 questions, they would directly say, okay, if it is coming from you, tell me which account to credit, and we do the credit in that account using local payment rails. So which is how we bypass the wire transfer system completely. So it is almost as if you were in Europe and you're sending payment to someone in Europe. You are in US sending payment to someone in US. You are in India sending payment to India. You're in Singapore sending payment to someone in Singapore. You just make it very, very local payment transfers wherever your supplier is.
So how is this? So I mean, I understand this, and it's a dumb question, but how is this different from like a Stripe of the world, or like global payments, or any legacy systems, right? What's preventing them to do stuff like you're doing?
So there are two parts of payments business. One part of payment business is collecting payment from supplier and bringing it to from customers and bringing it to the supplier's bank account, right? For example, you are a SaaS company, you put a payment gateway link where someone can pay you by credit card. That's what Stripe does for you, right? We do the opposite side of it. So you collected payment from your customer. Now you got to pay to suppliers. Now your supplier is not accepting payment through credit card because usually that's a larger value of payments, right? How do you make payment to them? You would go to your bank and do a wire transfer to them. Or the suppliers in Canada, you would possibly do an e-transfer to them. E-transfer has, let's say, $3,000 limit. Wire transfer, you can't really do small value wire transfer, and it takes 5 days to reach, and you have to pay $25 to send, and the recipient is going to pay another $20 to receive. We cut all that out. So what Stripe does is bringing money from your customer using their credit card or debit card into your bank account. We help you make that payment to your suppliers, contractors worldwide. So we are doing what Stripe does on the accounts receivable side is what we do on the accounts payable side.
Okay, gotcha. So you're saying that's two different markets. Like there's two different different players in that. Like so I guess most people are more used to the Stripe side of things, right? You put my credit card information, you put my information to make payments, all that's paid out.
Yeah.
Systematically, is there big systematic changes from the front end of that to the back end, I guess? Can we call it that, front end like that being the front end kind of piece of payments, and this being a back end how business operate?
It does, very different. So for example, when you do credit card acceptance, it's a Visa and Master which is processing the payment and ensuring that card could be issued by JP Morgan Chase in US, and the supplier is in BMO Bank of Montreal, and Stripe is collecting payment from the card, and the settlement between Chase and BMO Bank of Montreal happens, right? Stripe does not do that settlement part of it. That's Visa and Master does it. As far as we are concerned, because there is no such network exists, so we had to create that network where we link those bank accounts and we do that settlement between the various bank accounts. So that's a completely different way of moving money than what the accounts receivable or payment gateways or acquirers they do it.
And I guess what prevents the market from coalescing, right? Like, why can't the same payment methodologies be used for the consumer side of credit cards and debit purchases to more of the business operation side, or between companies? Why is it so complicated?
Yeah, so very simple. If you look at it, if you're a merchant and if you receive payment through credit card, you would typically pay 3% to receive that payment, right? Now 3% on a $500 transaction, $1,000 transaction is still okay to pay, right? But just imagine if you raised an invoice for $10,000 or $5,000 and you have to pay 3%. That's a large part of money which is going away from your profit typically, right? And which is the reason why that kind of payment is not done using credit or debit rails. Now, what do you do then? You send an invoice to the to your customer and say, hey, this is my bank detail, please send payment to me, right? So now the onus is on your customer to push payment to you, rather than in the first case where supplier is using Stripe or any other such payment gateway, is pulling money from a card, which now is a responsibility of your customer to settle with, right? So customer pays through credit card and you settle with your credit card. I got my money, right? Now, because the cost is important, the second part of the cost is when you do foreign currency transaction. You raise an invoice on someone in Europe, right? And you try and accept credit card payment. Besides 3% that you would pay on card acceptance fee, another 2.5%, 3% is what would be paid either by you or by the supplier in foreign currency conversion fee. And plus the conversion rate is going to be bad because there's no transparency on that, right? So you would end up paying almost 7% on that transaction if it is a foreign currency transaction. Now, which is the reason why you need more efficient way of moving money, which is bank-to-bank transaction. Something as simple as doing an e-transfer. Hardly anyone pays any money for that, right? That's what we do.
Yeah. No, that's a very clear explanation. Thank you for that. That was great. I kind of understand a little bit better now what's going on, because I have a surprising lack of knowledge when it comes to the payment space, and I've only recently discovered this by talking to companies like yourselves on the complications in this. Because from the outsider looking in, you're just used to, I need money, I get, it just comes, right? My employer sends it to me, my paychecks, I put my credit card information into a thing, it just works, right? Like, what's the complexity here? Why can't it work easier? Then we had in 2018, 2017, 18, the whole decentralized movement really picked up, such as crypto, fueled by the crypto mining community. And we start seeing, this is a whole new system is going to be built. The legacy system is going to be demolished, and now it's going to be all decentralized, power to the people, right? And that kind of movement kind of fizzled out almost, right? Do you see any kind of blends or any kind of, I guess, usage of the decentralized systems or decentralized, not cryptocurrency, but blockchain technologies? How is that being implemented here, or is it implementation in the space?
So clearly, decentralization is something which will come. Just that it will take more time to come. Cryptocurrencies in the current form isn't really viable. But I'll just give you another analogy. If you look at any political system, right, you have established political system, and then you have a completely fringe system, right? What does fringe system do? Does that fringe ever become mainstream? World history shows it does not. And even if it does, it remains for a very, very short period of time. But what it really does is it puts a lot of pressure on the legacy political system to reform, right? And then it comes somewhere midway, right? And we find a middle path.
Yeah.
That's what world history teaches us. Currencies are no different. Economies are no different, right? We have seen again, be it extreme left or extreme right, never works. It just puts pressure on the other side to take 2 steps towards the center, the other one takes 2 steps towards the center, and we somewhere meet in between, either left of center or right of center. That's what is going to happen with currencies as well. Cryptocurrencies, when they came in, they said, uproot this world, change everything overnight. We don't want the system. Yes, there are flaws. What it really did was it really put pressure on legacy payment systems, right? Federal Reserve, the economists sitting in position of authority to take note and say, hey, what they're saying, the way they're saying could be wrong, but what they're saying is not wrong, right? That acceptance took time to come, but it happened, right? And which is why you see the movement towards, reform in the way money movement happens, started coming in. And you have seen various different countries now starting with their own experiments. Canada has done experiments on blockchain. China is heard that they're doing some experiments around digital currency. For a long time, if you look at it, currency has been digital. When we use cards, we don't really use the currency notes, right? We don't really use, when we send payment, money is actually physically not moving. It has remained digital for a long time. It's the way money is managed. Exactly, right? The way money is managed has not changed over a period of time. And this is what is forcing the entire cryptocurrency movement is putting pressure on this to be reformed. And which is why we see, I would still call it a middle path. It's still experimental stage, but a lot more acceptance has come in for things like stablecoin, right? Because that basically means that governments don't lose control. Mind you, currency is something which is very tightly integrated with the notion of sovereignty. It's almost like being a flag, right? This is my currency, it's like, this is my flag. Expecting the governments to disown currencies and replace them with a global currency is like saying, I'm going to open my borders and I'm going to burn my flag and I'll become one world. That's not happening anytime soon, right? So we are not going to see single currency ruling the entire world, because most governments would want that control, because that's how they manage economy. It will become more transparent. It will put pressure on them to reform the way economy is managed, and it will make it easy for companies like us to come and play a role in the transformation that is happening and provide a way for shift from the traditional ways to whatever the future looks like.
That's a really good assessment. I really like that idea that the blockchain movement put pressure on the legacy systems, and it's the back and forth is what's really revolutionizing and driving forth innovation. And I mean, the whole point of capitalism is that it's supposed to be a competitive market, right? Competition is what drives growth and innovation. And I mean, I think the frustration with most people is that the lack of change in the legacy system in the current financial sector is because it's been almost monopolies, right? Like all these companies are so big, the banks are too big to fail, that like they're just operating and they continue to operate through inefficiencies that there's no involvement in it. And now that we're seeing this rapid kind of growth, I guess people are kind of more excited to see where that steps here, where does that go towards? So I guess we'll end with this. What is, from the payment side and from your point of view, what does the ideal world look like? What is a solution from the remitter side look like, idealized?
Ideal world is invisible real-time payments. It should be as simple as I go to your portal and say, hey, ship me this product. It could be coming from anywhere in the China. I go to supplier, send them a purchase order. Supplier should get paid exactly the same way without having to make an effort, which is invisible, which does not become a chore. It does not require additional effort to make a payment. And it is fast, real time. Today, it's faster for goods to arrive from another country than for the payment to reach there. That's not the ideal world, right? Mm-hmm. Like I said, money is digital. Money should reach the way email reaches. We have a long way to go, but that's where we are headed. Invisible real-time payments. And that's how global commerce will really become global.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. That's a great sentiment to end on. And Kanchan, thank you for your time. Thank you for being on here.
Thank you, Ravi, for this opportunity.
Thank you.